Hello, this is Arielle the Inconspicuous Bear, and I'll be narrating the 10-man version of the Heroic General Nazgrim encounter in the Siege of Orgrimmar from a Guardian point of view. Just a reminder that as with all of the heroic guides, I'm not going to reiterate any of the normal mode encounter mechanics, so if you need a refresher on those, go ahead and click on the normal mode encounter guide in the top right hand corner of your screen. There's only a couple of new heroic mechanics, so I don't want to spend time rehashing things that you should know already if you're doing this on heroic. There are two new mechanics to this encounter, other than the usual stuff does more damage and does more things, blah 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 blah. The first is a new ad spawns, and it's called a sniper. You don't have to worry about this because it can never affect you other than if someone positions incorrectly and then the shots hit you for some reason. But normally you will just basically ignore it. The other thing is a tank-specific mechanic called Execute. Now, this ability does 3 million physical damage every time it hits, and this damage is reduced by armor and any other physical damage reductions you may have at the time. Now, as a Guardian, how you will typically receive this, well, it really depends on whether you tank first or second. I've always gone first on Nazgrim, and therefore 9 times out of 10 it happens when I have 2 stacks of the Sunder debuff on me. So, and I know I can survive it with purely just a bark skin. However, depending on your gear level, you may need to stack bark skin with something else, or use a major cooldown. You probably shouldn't, but it's possible that if your gear is like really terrible, it might be a problem for you. However, typically you just need a bark skin for the if you have 2 stacks of the Sunder armor debuff, and otherwise, normally if you have 1 or none, you can just eat it with no problem. If you have 3 or more stacks, you'll want to use a major cooldown in addition to bark skin in order to survive. Other changes that you may need to make to this encounter in terms of what you're doing depend entirely on how your raid approaches the encounter. Something to be aware of is that the War Shamans now hit really, really hard, as opposed to normal where they were just kind of meh, not really that big of a deal. Now they will pretty much 2-shot even a plate DPS, so if you don't have enough stuns to keep them locked down while you kill them, then or CC it or what have you, then I'd recommend tanking those while they're being killed. Also, something else to be aware of is that the mages get really nasty really fast, so if possible, when you're not actually tanking the boss, if you can CC, stun, otherwise interrupt the mages, that would also be good. The third thing is that the spin to win guys, the Iron Blades I think they're called, they're really annoying and they're really fast. If there's any way, however, you can actually tank them. You just have to, your melee just have to be aware not to stand in the spin to win while it's happening. So, to recap, if necessary, tank the shamans, interrupt the mages, and tank spin to wins if your raid determines that's the best way to approach those mechanics. For tanking items, you can really go 50-50 here, depending on what level your gear's at, or how comfortable you feel with the fight. If you're first doing it and you're not really too comfortable with handling Execute correctly, I definitely recommend using the tanking cloak. Obviously, personally, I don't use the tanking cloak, and it has resulted in my dying more than once, and it's something that Sunny quite often makes fun of me for. Otherwise, go ahead, if you're totally fine with it, go ahead and use the DPS cloak. On the other hand, you totally want to use the DPS meta because his auto attacks don't really hit that hard, but there's a bunch of other stuff like the War Shamans, like the mages, like the spin to win guys that are really annoying, and it's usually quite possible that you may not be receiving heals for pretty, not necessarily lengthy, but there can be times where you just don't receive any heals because the healers have other things to do. So having that tanking metagem will certainly help out your own survival. Talent choices on this encounter are actually pretty clear cut. For tier 1, you probably want to take Wild Charge in order to allow yourself to move between the boss and the ads as much as possible. Getting a really bad tank swap where one tank ends up taking 4 stacks of Sunder is very detrimental because it'll likely result in getting a War Song at some point. Might not be immediately, but you'll probably get one somewhere down the road. And War Songs on Heroic are really, really, really bad. So if you're handling the tank swaps correctly, you will never get a War Song. However, if you screw it up somehow, you'll get a War Song, and stuff will go south really, really fast. So make sure you have Wild Charge to swap back to bounce back and forth between the ads and the boss as often as possible. Tier 2, I mean, I guess you could take Snare Ward to recover from executes, but that's what Frenzy Regen's for, so why would you bother? I just take Ysera's Gift because it's passive smart healing. Tier 3 Typhoon is like the no-brainer choice here. Allows you to knock back assassins as they're chasing people, functions as a secondary interrupt on both the shaman and the mage, knocks out the Iron Blade so people can run away from, all that sort of stuff. Typhoons is basically the one button wonder. Tier 4 Incarnation, like, Incarnation is straight up better than Soul of the Forest if you time it correctly with high periods of high vengeance. Since this boss has like exact 30-second tank swaps, you will get a full use out of Incarnation while you're tanking a boss and have lots of vengeance. So, kind of a no-brainer choice. Tier 5 really depends on your raid comp. You can either get Ursul's Vortex to help control assassins and Iron Blades, or you can take Bash to help control mages, and it works on assassins too, and shamans. So, depending on your raid comp, pick and choose what works best. And then Tier 6 is Nature's Vigil, because you can't use Heart of the Wild. You could theoretically make some use of Dream of Cenarius again, because it's pretty often, or there are periods where raid members will take spike damage, especially from the mage, if it's not being handled correctly. However, I'm just finding that Nature's Vigil is just a better overall talent for not only DPS, but to help out raid healing when there's things like bone crackers and so forth. There really isn't anything to be particularly aware of as a guardian on this fight. I've already explained what to do with the executes and things you can do to help control ads. Other than that, there's no guardian specific tricks or tips or anything that you need to be aware of in order to help your guild succeed at this encounter. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and good luck in the Siege of Orgrimmar. Got the boss.
Stop or no?
Oh, keep going. And these ads are going to come out, hero and kill them. Get the boss. Yeah, this is perfect. I'll grab the ads. Let's focus on the boss. Rally, please. Thank you.
Yay!